That was just me webbing up some of the worst Spider-Man hot takes I've ever read, but with great power comes great responsibility, so I'll do my best to get through some of these hot takes. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm reacting to your Spider-Man hot takes. I put up a post on my community tab. There were nearly 200 hot takes for me to sift through, and I picked out 40 plus hot takes that I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on. Some of these honestly offended me. Some of them are laughable, but I ended up agreeing with a fair share of them as well. So before I dive into this, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your biggest Spider-Man hot take, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel, and stay tuned for my Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse out of theater action coming tonight, as well as my review tomorrow. Very excited for that movie. I'll have a lot to say about that as we head into the weekend. But now it's time to face these hot takes head on. Let's do the damn thing. So the first one's from Avatar Enthusiast, and it says, Mysterio is one of the most underrated Spider-Man villains despite his motivations being stale. He is at least on par with Vulture. I take Vulture over Mysterio, especially if we're talking MCU here. I like Mysterio. I think the reason that I do in the MCU so much is because Jake Gyllenhaal fully commits and just goes over the top. You can tell he's having fun in the role. He still does con Peter Parker and tries to ruin his life a little bit as well. But in terms of the last part of this hot take, Vulture is the superior villain, so I don't think they're on par with each other. The next one says, TASM 2 is awesome. Top 5 or 4 Spider-Man movies. The love between Peter and Gwen is great, her death is sad, and Spider-Man is awesome paired with Andrew Garfield's insane acting job. I feel people overlook the good things and find the bad things to complain about. You know what? I think you might be onto something. I personally wouldn't put it in my top 5 favorite Spider-Man movies. Now, a bunch of you probably think that means I hate the movie. That's not true at all. I'm positive on the movie, and each time I rewatch it, I enjoy it more and more. I think what really carries this movie, like you said here in the hot take, the Peter and Gwen romance. This is the best romantic relationship in any Spider-Man movie, period. And Andrew Garfield's acting is the best performance by a lead actor in a Spider-Man film. I say that with my full chest. He is not only the best Spider-Man actor, but he gives the best performance as Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The genuine heartbreak that he suffers at the end of that movie rips my heart out every single time, and he just sells it so well, and I adore his performance in this movie. Now, that's not to say the movie doesn't have issues, because it does, but so does Spider-Man 3, so does Far From Home. Every main Spider-Man actor has one of those movies that to the masses was more of a miss than a hit. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is way too overhated, and I think you're very right. You hit the nail on the head with the end of this take here, saying people overlook the good things and complain too much about the bad things. You're 100% right. The Green Goblin storyline doesn't even need to be there, in my opinion. You should just had Electro as the main villain. It's got its goofy moments, and it definitely feels a little stuffed as they're trying to set up the Sinister Six and TASM 3, which obviously never came to be. But there are a lot of great moments in this film. From the web swing to the Spidey action to the score, my god, it's incredible. And then, of course, the Peter-Gwen romance carries the film. So the good definitely outweighs the bad here. And I agree, it's an awesome movie. It's just not top 5 for me because I have a deep love for most of the Spider-Man movies, so it comes down to personal preference. This is not one I'm going to rewatch as much as some of the others, but again, it is a good movie that gets way too much hate. The next hot take says, Spider-Man 3 is one of the best Spider-Man movies and is up there with No Way Home and Spider-Man 2002. It has an amazing final battle and finishes out Harry's arc beautifully. Also, it gives the Tobey Maguire memes that make me laugh every time. You know what? I'll agree with you on the last part. This is the most memeable Spider-Man movie. I laugh my ass off every time at just the over-the-top cheesiness and the dancing bit and just the line delivery. It's so quotable. It's a cheesy-ass movie. It's not one of the best Spider-Man movies, though. I have to take, like, the fact that I can view it as a comedy and the nostalgia aside. It is riddled with issues, much like TASM 2. There's a lot of studio interference here. No need for Venom to be in the movie. He doesn't become Venom until the final 30 minutes. Sandman should have been the main villain. It would have been 10 times better. I will agree with you. They do a great job of rounding out Harry's arc. I mean, it's really beautiful. You know, the final moments he has with Peter and MJ. But no, the movie, it's got a lot going on, especially in like the first 20 minutes. A symbiote crashes down. We see Sandman turn into Sandman. You've got the Harry amnesia plotline. This is all within like 20 minutes of the movie opening. It's a lot, and I don't think it can be one of the best with so much going on. The next hot take says, No Way Home is still my favorite Spider-Man movie and one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I know it's popular to hate on this movie now and just call it fan service, the movie, but this movie makes Peter go through so much, and watching the Goblin corrupting him was so fascinating to see, and it just may be the darkest Spider-Man story. I totally see what you're saying. I do think it's become popular to call it fan service, and it's only good after Tobey and Andrew shows up, and there's no denying the fact that the movie's elevated when Tobey and Andrew show up, but I still really enjoy everything before. It does drag a little bit on rewatch, but when I've seen a movie 7+ times, I feel like that's almost inevitable with any movie. It's a great movie, and it's still a top-tier Spider-Man movie of all time, it has become pretty popular to hate it, and Peter does go through the ringer. He loses Aunt May, he loses everyone by the end of the movie that he ever knew or loved. He's erased from their memory. It's pretty damn dark, you might be onto something there, but I do agree it's become a little bit underrated in a way. Movie fan 123 says Homecoming is the best and most underrated Spider-Man movie. Vulture is the best Spidey villain, and the struggle that Peter goes through with balancing his hero and school life is done greatly. It is not the best Spider-Man movie. I just rewatched it last night actually, and I still really enjoy it. It's like a 4 out of 5 movie. Really love the coming of age vibes and the high school feel, and you're 100% right. Vulture is a top tier Spider-Man villain. Michael Keaton just owns that role, and the scene where Peter opens the door and he says, "You must be Peter," and then the whole car scene, "I will kill you and everyone you love." Like when he pulls out the pistol and he just looks at him, that's intense shit. I do think there's some better Spider-Man villains in the Raimi trilogy, however. That being said, the movie is underrated. People really love to over-critique this one. The big flaw for me is that it lacks some of that classic web-swinging Spidey action, and we get some, not stale, but a little bit underwhelming action sequences. I more so appreciate this movie as a coming-of-age high school flick focused on Peter Parker more than the Spidey action. That's where it lacks for me, but I still really, really enjoy this one. It's like 9 or 10 in my MCU ranking, I want to say. The next hot take says The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is perfect and truly one of the best Spider-Man movies. I don't think it's perfect, but I will say each time I rewatch both TASM 1 and 2, I appreciate them more and more. In fact, I remember seeing the first TASM movie in theaters back in 2012. As a 12-year-old, I walked out of the theater and I was like, that's my favorite Spider-Man movie. I said that with like every movie I saw back then. It was just a phase that we all probably went through. But still, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is great. And I think the James Horner score is so slept on. That theme, like the main Spider-Man theme from this movie, chills every single time. It's a great origin story. It does a good job of sort of switching up some of the beats from the Raimi trilogy. One thing I've just never loved about the TASM movies is that they focus on Peter's parents. And I know that's new. They didn't do it in the Raimi trilogy, but I've never loved any of the story involving Peter's birth parents. It's just felt a little off to me. I will say TASM is higher in my ranking than it was last time though, and it's a really good movie. I just don't think that it is perfect. Hot take, Spider-Man 3 is the best of the Raimi trilogy. I'm gonna stop it right there. No, it is the worst of the Raimi trilogy. I think objectively the worst of the Raimi trilogy. What else do they have to say? I loved the symbiote and Peter being a menace. I loved the villains and dialogue. Ending was sad but great. It's the best Spider-Man movie in his trilogy. I don't think so. It's the worst. It's the longest and most overstuffed. And again, I said this earlier in the video. In the first 20 to 30 minutes, if you guys rewatch it, we open the movie with Peter kind of updating the world and his life as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and then his relationship with MJ, and then we see, boom, Venom symbiote, boom, Sandman, boom, Harry Osborn fighting Peter, and then he gets amnesia. It's like 3 main villains and we're just jumping around. It's way too much too fast. I enjoy the movie for the memes, and it still does end up telling a pretty powerful story about forgiveness and redemption in the end, but it is a long, windy road to get there and has a lot of issues. It is not better than Spider-Man 1 or 2 by any means. Robin says, I really enjoy the look of the Night Monkey suit. I don't really care for that suit. It was always one of the more bland to me in the entirety of the Spider-Man films. It basically looks like a sweater, like a thick turtleneck sweater, essentially, with some goggles from the pool that were painted black. Like, I just never cared for it. It's a cool concept, you know, that we got to see like a variation of the main Spider-Man suit, because we don't really get that in the other films. Almost like, you know, the old Batman days where he would have all these different suits. But nah, I just, it's not that memorable to me. I hate how they use it so much in marketing too. Like, one of the posters is like half Night Monkey suit, half regular Far From Home suit. It's like, why is this suit getting so much marketing? There's no need. Adam says, Andrew Garfield not only is the best actor to play Spider-Man, you're 100% right, but he had the best love interest with Gwen. You're 100% right. The best suits and the best web swinging. Correct. Don't get me wrong, I still love Tom Holland and love Tobey even more. Totally fair across the board. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man films have the best web swinging. I just rewatched all of them. There's no debating it. It's honestly so immersive. It feels like we get POV shots of us in the Spider-Man suit. Definitely has the best love interest, and he is the best actor. So you're 100% right there. I love all 3 Spider-Men, but Andrew's the best actor and probably the best Spider-Man. Far From Home is actually great. I will say Far From Home is underrated. I don't know if I would go as far as say it's a great movie. I do think it's really solid though. It's the weakest of the MCU trilogy. It does have its flaws, but I think it's a very underrated movie. Very good movie. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's actually a great movie though. Next hot take says they should have never revealed Spider-Man in the Civil War trailers, but instead made it a surprise in the film. I agree. I wish that would have been like a first-time experience in the movie theater, but at the same time, that had to have been responsible for selling some tickets. You can't have Spider-Man in a movie and not show it, because that's just a missed opportunity in marketing. Like, everything comes down down to the money and the business perspective, that would be a huge missed opportunity. Plus, it was still really cool in the theater to see Queens pop up on screen and then get this Spider-Man scene. It's not like the first time we ever saw Spider-Man in the MCU was when he swung in. Like, we got to see Peter and we had the great scene with him and Tony that was kind of like a Uncle Ben-esque scene in a way. So I still appreciated the way that they introduced him into the MCU. Even though we did know he was going to be in the movie, it was still really cool the way they went about that. Taco Boy Studio says, hot take, Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. Honestly, that's not a hot take. I appreciate your input and I do agree with you, he's the best Spider-Man, but especially after No Way Home, this is not a hot take. Maybe at one point in time, like in 2019, this was a hot take, but nowadays, most people actually pretty much agree. I'm rewatching all the movies now, and he is the best actor and the best Spider-Man. Spider-Man 3 is a more rewatchable movie than the original Spider-Man. False. It might have more memes, but the original Spider-Man is one of the greatest Spider-Man films and origin stories we've ever seen. It feels like it's straight out of a comic book put on the big screen. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin carries it, and it's a really, really fun movie that flies by. It's only 2 hours as opposed to 2 hours and 20 minutes. So if we're talking rewatchability, give me the 2-hour film that has a great villain over the 2.5-hour pretty much movie that goes off the rails at times. Emily says Zendaya MJ is the best live-action love interest in my opinion. I disagree. I gotta go Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, but Zendaya's MJ is the second best, and we'll talk about who the worst is later in this video. VTTV says Gwen Stacy is a better love interest than MJ, specifically because she was great in TASM. Yeah, she's great in the TASM movies. Yeah, Gwen Stacy is better than MJ, and I mean, that goes for Zendaya's MJ, and of course, Mary Jane Watson from the Raimi Trilogy. She is the worst live-action love interest, and the next hot take actually agrees. Mary Jane in the Tobey Trilogy is the worst. Shout out Starcourt Food Court, but yeah, the worst. The most frustrating. Peter and MJ in the Raimi Trilogy have the least chemistry. It feels unorganic when they get together, and they have so many issues. Whereas Zendaya and Tom Holland and Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield have significantly more chemistry. It's more believable, and they have scenes that really pull on my heartstrings. I'm almost more irritated with a love interest dynamic in the Raimi Trilogy more than I feel anything from it. Like, frankly, it's one of the weaker aspects of the Raimi Trilogy. Wally B says The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better than all of the Raimi movies. Again, it just comes down to personal preference at this point. I can't say that just because I love Spider-Man 1 and 2 so much, but The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a really solid and enjoyable movie. The next one says Peter B. Parker is my favorite Spider-Man iteration. I love this hot take. A Spider-Verse one, kind of switching it up a little bit. Peter B. Parker, voiced by Jake Johnson, really lovable character. You know, he's down on his luck in a way, and by the end of the movie, Miles kind of inspires him to go back and be his best version of himself in his respective universe. I love him as a mentor to Miles. He's hilarious at times, and he's one of the best characters in that movie, so great take here. I love it. Speaking of Into the Spider-Verse, Tim says, don't get me wrong, Into the Spider-Verse is a good movie, the animation is perfect, and the story as a Spider-Man fan is amazing, but I think it's a little bit overrated after all these years. My biggest criticism towards this movie, the characters, except for Miles and Peter B. Parker, everyone else feels very bland and uninteresting. Yes, even Kingpin and Prowler, I know. I could not disagree more. I mean, you failed to even mention Spider-Gwen here. She's one of the most fascinating characters in that movie, and we're gonna get even more of her. Spider-Ham in this movie is hilarious. Spider-Man Noir is in this movie, and he is great as well. There's so many fascinating supporting characters that add comedy and flair to the film. Prowler's great, the way that he takes Miles under his wing, and Miles looks up to him in the heartbreaking moment at the end. Even Jefferson Davis, Miles' father, is a great character in this movie who really makes that father-son dynamic work, as we see early in the movie when he drops Miles off at school and he speaks to him like over the intercom and embarrasses him. Like, that's a great moment in the movie, and they have awesome chemistry. I don't think Kingpin's remotely bland or uninteresting. He is a terrifying villain who literally kills Peter Parker at the beginning of the film, and then you kind of feel for him at times when it comes to his relationship with Vanessa. So he's an understood villain, and I disagree. I think the characters are great in Into the Spider-Verse. I also thoroughly enjoy the story, so I'm gonna have to disagree strongly with this take. Mr. Hollywood says Spider-Man No Way Home is a top 3 movie of all time and the best superhero film ever. It's not even top 3 MCU for me, so I can't say it's a top 3 movie all time, and I think there's better superhero films. Spider-Man No Way Home is still a top 10 MCU movie. I think it was 7 in my most recent ranking. Again, love the movie. I just have it a little bit further back than when I originally did after it came out. That's not to say it's bad. That's not to say it's a fan service movie. I adore it. It's a fantastic Spider-Man movie and damn near my favorite still. You guys have to stay tuned for my ranking coming later this week. Frank says Spider-Man 2 is still the best Marvel movie in my opinion. I would put Endgame at number 2 though. This is why I say Spider-Man 2 is overrated. And I love Spider-Man 2. It's pretty high in my personal Spider-Man ranking. But for a while I've said the movie's a little overrated just because I've seen takes like this where it's the best Marvel movie movie of all time. Of all time, I'm gonna have to disagree because I take the OG Spider-Man over Spider-Man 2. Now, I have pretty much nothing but praise for Spider-Man 2, but I just can't say that it's the best Marvel movie ever made when a movie like Infinity War exists or when a movie like Spider-Man exists. Toxic Gamer says, I think there has not been an utterly bad Spider-Man movie. They're either okay or higher, mostly higher. I agree. There has not been a bad Spider-Man movie. Even films that people bash like Spider-Man 3 or TASM 2, the good outweighs the bad. For me, the lowest rated Spider-Man movie is still solid to good. The best Spider-Man movie is incredible. There is no bad or Spider-Man movie in my eyes. They all have something to love, and they all are very rewatchable. Movie fan Jay says Venom 2018 is a great movie. Venom, Venom. The Eminem rap or whatever, that's kind of something that I always remember from that movie, but Venom is so forgettable. Venom 2 is even worse, I would say. Both movies very bland, but Venom 2018, that movie's pretty painful to sit through and rewatch. I don't see myself ever visiting it again. Love Tom Hardy. I'm glad Venom is out there, I guess, but I much prefer Venom as a straight-up Spider-Man villain, not as some anti-hero leading his own movie. It just doesn't work for me. Don't know how that movie made so much money at the box office. It really blows my mind because it's not that good. The next one says Sandman is the best villain. I will give a shout out to Sandman right here. I really love this character in Spider-Man 3. He's one of the best parts of the movie. I think that he should have been the main villain, front and center. It's tragic what happens, you know, how he just loves his daughter and he's trying to look out for her. It's a very tragic backstory, so you can kind of root for the guy in a way, and the way they retcon Uncle Ben's death involving Flint Marko, Sandman, is heartbreaking. Sandman's theme as well, like the few notes on the piano, the way that plays out, Danny Elfman, you bastard, because that always pulls on my heartstrings. It's great stuff. So I can say Sandman's a great villain. I wouldn't say he's the best Spider-Man villain though, when Green Goblin and Doc Ock exist in the same trilogy. The next one says The Amazing Spider-Man is better than Spider-Man 2. I still take Spider-Man 2, I think, but The Amazing Spider-Man has really grown on me over time, and I can see where you're coming from. I'm not gonna say that's like a blasphemous take. Like, I can appreciate and understand where you're coming from with it. Tobey cries too much. You're not wrong. He cries a lot, but I guess he's just an emotional guy. He definitely does the lip twitch thing. The Art Drummer says TASM 1 is the best Spider-Man movie. I disagree, but I really enjoy it, and again, to each their own. I feel like all these movies are, like we talked about earlier, really good to incredible, so it comes down to personal preference with a lot of these. I'm not gonna get mad at that take as much as I used to. The next one, I don't get. Ned is better than Harry Osborn. No shot, especially if we're talking James Franco's Harry Osborn versus Jacob Batalon's Ned from the MCU trilogy. Give me Harry Osborn all day. Harry Osborn's arc in that trilogy is amazing. He becomes hell-bent on wanting to kill Spider-Man because Spider-Man killed his father. And then by the end, he teams up with Spidey and sacrifices himself for him. It's this beautiful full circle moment. Ned more so there for the comedy, there for the jokes, doesn't have that big of a role in really any of the movies. And at this point in time, he doesn't even know who Peter Parker is. I don't know if Ned's even going to come back in the future Spider-Man films in the MCU. Harry Osborn had a beautiful arc. I think he's the better written character and the overall better performance, in my opinion. Alex says Spider-Man Homecoming is a bad Spider-Man movie, but a good movie, if that makes sense. I can kind of see where you're coming from. I touched on this a little earlier. Like, Spider-Man Homecoming lacks in a lot of the classic tropes that make a great Spider-Man movie, whether we're talking the web swinging in the streets of New York, the score, even like a love interest like him and Liz, I never really cared that much about. However, he does still suffer loss in the movie. Now, it's not in as big of a scale as like losing your loved one, but he still has to struggle and balance between being Spider-Man and Peter Parker and has to make some sacrifices. Now, they might be smaller scale, like I said, but still, that's a fair point. I still think it's a really good Spider-Man movie, but I know what you mean in terms of being a bad Spider-Man movie because it doesn't have some of those classic Spidey tropes. Mr. Fett says Spider-Verse is overrated AF, and Bad Luck says Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is garbage. Whether they were just saying those to get my attention or they firmly believe it, I just disagree. I think that it will become popular to hate on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is a great, great movie, and if you guys haven't rewatched it in a while, I encourage you to do so because I rewatched it recently and it just totally re-sparked how much I love the movie. From beginning to end, one of the best written Spider-Man films. The soundtrack, the actual score, the leap of faith scene, everything about this movie works wonderfully, and I'm very hopeful that Across the Spider-Verse will be just as good, if not better. This movie is far from garbage, it's far from overrated, it is properly rated as one of the best Spider-Man films ever made. Zane says Andrew Garfield is the worst Peter Parker and not a very good Spider-Man. Kinda lifeless in a way and unfunny. Wow, we must have watched different movies because I think that his quips are the best out of the three main Spider-Men. He is hilarious, especially in the first TASM film. Achoo! He sneezes and, you know, oh my gosh, my greatest fear, a tiny knife. He is hilarious in both films. He's the master of these Spider-Man quips, especially when he's facing off against villains, kind of taking shots at them. I'm not even going to read the rest of the hot take because the first one really just jars me. Lifeless? He gives the best performance of the three and it's not even close. Sam Raimi's trilogy is overrated and the third film is genuinely bad. Again, to each their own. I don't think it's bad, but there's an argument to be had there. And the trilogy overrated. I disagree though. I love 1 and 2. 3 is the weakest for sure, but 1 and 2 are so great that it's a overall very, very good trilogy. Arrow says Tobey Maguire is by far the worst Spider-Man. This is so tough for me because when it comes to comparing them, I think they're all great in their respective universes for different reasons. I think Andrew's probably the best to me right now. Tom captures the youthfulness of Spider-Man more so than the others. He genuinely feels like a high schooler. The other two at times look like 30-year-old men. I mean, there's just no denying that. Tobey, I have the nostalgia for. I think that he captures the Peter Parker feel so well and he's great Spider-Man. Then you got Tom. It's tough. I wouldn't say he's by far the worst. I don't even know if he is the worst. I might take him over Tom on any given day. They all rotate so much for me. I don't think that whoever is in last place, it's by far. I think it's a close race between all three of them. I can't say he's the worst right now. It's so tough. I go back and forth. It's all a very close margin and it's all personal preference at the end of the day. Dr. Toxic says Spider-Man PS4 is greater than Tobey, Tom, and Andrew. I've played Spider-Man PS4 to 100% completion. This was years ago now, but I really enjoyed it. However, for me, it's easier to connect with a film character than a video game character. I don't know if that's just me. Let me know how you feel in the comments down below. I think Spider-Man PS4 is an incredible game, and I really did feel a lot for that character. Aside from the cutscenes, it's like I'm playing a Spider-Man, so I view myself as Spidey in a way when I'm playing that game. Like I'm through the perspective of Spidey. It's harder for me to full-on connect with that version of the character from the video game because it's just different media. I think it's even hard to compare a video game character to a movie character. I love Spider-Man PS4. It's a great adaptation of the character, but I still think I'd take the movie adaptations over it. Owen says Doc Ock is the worst villain in the Raimi trilogy. He just doesn't have a good arc. He goes from being a good guy to good guy all of a sudden. Overall, not a bad villain, but not good. By saying Doc Ock is the worst villain in the Raimi trilogy, that says Venom. Topher Grace's Venom is better than Doc Ock. Absolutely not. I think Green Goblin's the best of the trilogy. Doc Ock's a close second. His life's work turns on him, and the chip on the back of his neck gets fried, so the arms start to take control of him. By the end of the movie, he realizes, like, I will not die a monster. He gains control of it, and he has this final sacrifice moment where he saves everybody. It's a beautiful arc. I strongly disagree with that. I think he's a great, great villain. Not even close to the worst in the Raimi trilogy. Everett says Spider-Man Homecoming is better than the entire Raimi trilogy. Fight me. I disagree. Spider-Man 1 and 2, again, they're better. I think Homecoming's better than Spider-Man 3, but Spider-Man 1 and 2, there's been a lot of disrespect thrown around in this comment section towards those movies. They're amazing movies, and it might just become popular to hate on them. I know a lot of people still love them. I do, but go rewatch them. I'm encouraging you guys to go rewatch them. They are great comic book movies. Sam Raimi's directorial flair shines in them, and Tobey's the man. I love those movies with great, great villains too. But that's gonna do it for reacting to your Spider-Man hot takes. Be sure to hit that like button. Again, comment some Spider-Man hot takes down below, and of course subscribe and hit that notification bell as I'm trying to reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel. It will mean a lot. Stay tuned for Spider-Man content all week. Out of theater reaction for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse tonight, followed by a review tomorrow, and then Spider-Man rankings galore as we head into the weekend. But thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see you guys later.